It begins with a spark. Not the kind that flickers from a flame, but something older, something deeper. A golden shimmer that dances through the air, tracing a perfect circle in space. And then, just like that, the world splits open. A doorway appears, glowing and alive, revealing another place entirely. A temple in Nepal, a battlefield on Titan, a realm untouched by time. This is the magic of Doctor Strange. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, portals aren't just a means of travel. They're a signature of sorcery, a visual language of mysticism that sets Strange apart from every other hero. While Iron Man builds machines and Thor calls lightning, Strange moves through reality itself, folding space with a flick of his wrist and stepping through the impossible. But this magic didn't begin on the screen. It was born in the pages of comic books. Decades ago, when Steve Ditko and Stan Lee introduced a character unlike any other. Dr. Stephen Strange wasn't a warrior or a genius inventor. He was a man broken by pride, rebuilt by knowledge, and transformed by forces beyond comprehension. His journey led him to Kamar-Taj, a hidden sanctuary where the rules of the universe bent to the will of those who dared to learn them. In those early stories, portals were wild and surreal swirling vortexes that defied logic. Strange would chant incantations, summon ancient entities, and vanish into dimensions that looked more like dreams than places. The visuals were psychedelic, the rules undefined, but they carried a sense of wonder, a promise that reality was far more flexible than we imagined. When Marvel brought Doctor Strange to the big screen in 2016, they gave his magic a structure. Portals became precise, elegant, and ritualistic. The sling ring was introduced, a small metallic band worn on the fingers of every sorcerer. It wasn't just a prop, it was a key. With it, Strange could channel dimensional energy, drawing it into a circle that sliced through space like a blade of light. The act of creating a portal became a performance. A gesture, a breath, a moment of focus. Strange would raise his hand, trace the air with deliberate motion, and the sparks would follow. It wasn't enough to want it, you had to see it. You had to remember the place you were going, feel it, connect to it. The magic was as much mental as it was mystical. And that's what made it compelling. These weren't shortcuts. They were earned. In his first attempts, Strange fails. His hands tremble, his mind wanders. Only when he lets go of fear and embraces belief does the portal open. It has a lesson woven into the very fabric of the story. Mastery comes not from power, but from surrender. Visually, Marvel crafted something unforgettable. The portals glow with golden fire, their edges crackling with energy. They're always circular symbols of unity, infinity, and the cycle of transformation. When they appear, they don't just change the scene. They change the stakes. A fight in one room becomes a chase across continents. A conversation in New York becomes a confrontation in the mirror dimension. And yet, for all their grandeur, portals have rules. They require concentration. They demand a sling ring. They can't move through time-only space. They falter when the caster is distracted, and they vanish when the ring is lost. These limitations ground the magic, giving it weight and consequence. Strange isn't invincible, he's skilled. And skill, in Marvel, is always earned through struggle. As the films progressed, portals evolved. In Avengers Infinity War, they became tactical weapons. Strange used them to redirect attacks, trap enemies, and coordinate with allies. In Multiverse of Madness, they became gateways to alternate realities, each one stranger than the last. And with the arrival of America Chavez, a girl who can punch star-shaped holes between universes, the idea of portals expanded beyond tools. They became expressions of identity, emotion, and destiny. But at their core, portals remain what they've always been, symbols of possibility. They represent the idea that the world is not fixed, that boundaries can be crossed, and that transformation is always within reach. For Doctor Strange, every portal is a choice, a step into the unknown, a leap of faith, a moment where magic and meaning collide. And when that circle of sparks appears, we know something extraordinary is about to happen. Chapter 2, Portal Physics. Could science make this real? It's easy to get swept away by the spectacle. A sorcerer draws a glowing circle in the air, and suddenly the laws of space no longer apply. One step through the portal, and you're halfway across the planet, or halfway across the multiverse. In Marvel's world, it's magic, but in ours, it's a question. Could something like this ever be real? To answer that, we have to leave behind the mystic arts and step into the realm of physics. Not the kind you learn in high school, but the kind that stretches the boundaries of what we think is possible. The kind that asks, what is space really? What is time, and are they as rigid as we assume? In the Marvel universe, portals are created by manipulating dimensional energy. Sorcerers use focus, memory, and tools like the sling ring to open gateways between locations. It's a blend of willpower and ancient knowledge. But in science, the closest analog to a portal is something far more elusive, the wormhole. Wormholes, also known as Einstein-Rosen bridges, are theoretical tunnels through spacetime. First proposed in 1935 by Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen. They're solutions to the equations of general relativity. In simple terms, they're shortcuts. If space is a fabric, then a wormhole is a fold in that fabric, connecting two distant points through a hidden passage. Imagine the universe as a sheet of paper. If you draw two dots on opposite ends, the shortest path between them is a straight line. But if you fold the paper so the dots touch, you've created a shortcut. That's the idea behind a wormhole. It's not just science fiction, it's math. The equations allow for it. The challenge is making it real, and that's where things get complicated. To keep a wormhole open, you'd need something called exotic matter. This isn't just rare, it's hypothetical. Exotic matter would have negative energy density, a property that defies our current understanding of physics. Without it, a wormhole would collapse instantly, crushed by the gravitational forces around it. So while the math says wormholes can exist, the materials needed to stabilize them remain out of reach. There's also the issue of scale. In Marvel, portals are human-sized, stable, and precise. In theoretical physics, wormholes might be microscopic, smaller than atoms. Some theories suggest they could exist at the quantum level, flickering in and out of existence in the film of spacetime. But scaling one up to the size of a doorway? That's a leap we haven't figured out. Still, science doesn't dismiss the idea entirely. In fact, some of the most advanced theories in physics like string theory and quantum gravity suggest that the universe may have hidden dimensions. These extra dimensions could, in theory, allow for shortcuts or connections between distant regions of space. It's speculative, yes, but it's not impossible. Then there's the multiverse. Marvel treats the multiverse as a vast network of alternate realities, each with its own version of events, characters, and laws. Doctor Strange doesn't just travel across space, he travels between universes. In physics, the multiverse is a hotly debated concept. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that every decision spawns a new universe. Others propose that our universe is just one bubble in a cosmic foam of infinite possibilities. If the multiverse exists, could we ever travel between universes? That's where science hits a wall. We have no evidence of other universes, let alone a way to reach them. But the idea persists, not just in fiction, but in serious scientific discourse. Because if reality is bigger than we think, then maybe the rules aren't as fixed as they seem. Of course, even if portals were possible, they'd raise enormous questions. What happens to causality? If you can step from one place to another instantly, do you break the flow of time? Could you create paradoxes? Could you escape consequences? These are the kinds of questions physicists wrestle with not just in theory, but in the implications of those theories. And yet, for all the complexity, there's something beautiful about the idea. Portals represent freedom. They suggest that the universe is not a prison of distance and delay, but a playground of possibility. In Marvel, they're tools of heroes. In science, they're glimpses of a future we haven't reached. So, could we ever build a portal like Doctor Strange? Not today. Not with our current technology, materials, or understanding. But the seeds of the idea are there in equations, in theories, in the minds of scientists who dare to ask, what if? And maybe that's the point. Marvel doesn't just entertain, it inspires. It takes the wildest dreams of physics and gives them form, light, and story. Because every great leap begins with imagination, and every portal begins with a spark. Chapter 3. If Marvel portals were real. Living in a world of instant wonder, imagine this. You're standing on beach, the morning sun warming your face, and you suddenly remember you left your phone in your friend's apartment in Berlin. No problem. You raise your hand, trace a glowing circle in the air, and step through. One breath later, you're in their kitchen. You grab the phone, smile, and portal back before your coffee cools. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is life in a world where Marvel's portals are real. In this reality, the sling ring isn't a cinematic relic, it's a standard accessory. Every household has one. Portal stations replace airports. The concept of far away becomes obsolete. You don't travel, you arrive. The transformation would be immediate and profound. Cities would no longer be constrained by geography. You could live in a quiet village and work in Manhattan. You could study in Oxford and sleep in your childhood home in Peru. The idea of migration would shift from permanent relocation to daily rhythm. Home becomes a fluid concept, wherever you choose to be. Traffic disappears. Roads become walking paths. The hum of engines fades, replaced by the soft crackle of dimensional energy. Carbon emissions plummet. The planet breathes easier. Climate change slows not because of sacrifice, but because of innovation. In hospitals, time becomes irrelevant. A surgeon in Tokyo operates on a patient in Nairobi without delay. Specialists are no longer bound by borders. Emergency response teams portal into disaster zones within seconds. Lives are saved not by luck, but by proximity redefined. Education flourishes. Children portal into classrooms across cultures. A history lesson takes place in ancient Rome. A science experiment happens at CERN. Language barriers dissolve as students learn side by side, not through screens but through shared space. And then there's the human experience. Relationships deepen. Long-distance love becomes a walk through a portal. Families scattered across continents gather for dinner every night. Grandparents read bedtime stories in person. Friends meet for coffee in Paris, lunch in Seoul, and sunset in Cape Town all in one day. But it's not just about convenience. It's about perspective. When you can step into any part of the world, you begin to see it differently. Empathy grows. Curiosity expands. Prejudice shrinks. You don't fear what's foreign, you visit it. You don't guess what others live, you witness it. The world becomes not just connected, but understood. Of course, there would be challenges. Security systems would evolve. Identity verification would be dimensional, not digital. Governments would redefine borders, not by land, but by access. Laws would stretch across realities. Ethics would be tested. Who controls the portals? Who decides where you can go? But humanity has always adapted. We built roads, then railways, then flight. Portals would be the next leap, not just in movement, but in meaning, and what of exploration? Space travel becomes a stroll. Colonies on Mars are no longer science fiction, they're suburbs. The ocean floor becomes a tourist destination. Lost civilizations are rediscovered. The boundaries of the known world dissolve, replaced by infinite possibility. Even death might be reimagined. If portals can reach other dimensions, could they reach beyond life? Could we visit the astral plane, speak to echoes of consciousness, explore the mystery of what comes next? In Marvel, Doctor Strange does. In our world, we begin to ask, what if? But perhaps the most powerful change would be internal. Portals would teach us that transformation is always one step away, that we are not trapped by circumstance, location, or fear, that every moment holds the potential for movement, for growth, for magic. Because in the end, portals aren't just about where you go, they're about who you become. And if Marvel's world were real, we wouldn't just live differently. We'd live more fully, more bravely, more connected. So as we close this journey through mysticism, science, and imagination, let's hold on to that vision. Let's believe in the possibility of a better world, not just through technology, but through empathy, creativity, and wonder. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or made you dream a little bigger, subscribe for more. Join us as we explore the edges of reality. The stories that shape us and the science that dares to catch up with fiction. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and become part of a community where curiosity opens every door. Because the next portal isn't just in the movies. It's in you.